Welcome back everyone to the very first tier list of the new season. As always, we'll be providing you guys with an update on all the changes that will be going live this patch and following that up with a tier list for every single role. Now, if you read the title, you'll have noticed that the patch number looks extremely weird. Riot has decided to completely revamp how they name patches. So let's break down what 25.S1.1 stands for. The 25 stands for the year that we are playing in, which is 2025. The S1 stands for Season 1, as there are going to be 3 uniquely themed seasons throughout 2025. Within each season, there will be around 8 patches, and that's what the second number 1 represents. Instead of referring to the patch as 25.S1.1, which is a bit of a mouthful, we'll probably just leave off the 25 and shorten it to S1.1. And to help you guys get ahead of everyone else, we had our challengers sweat it out on PBE all through December to put together this incredible Season 15 starter course that tells you all the hidden OP strategies, so check that out on our website if you want to do your homework and win all of your placement games. And do you remember when knowing how to set up a freeze in low elo made you feel special? These days, you're considered a troll if you don't know what a freeze is. Problem is, challengers are so out of touch with the fact that everyone in low elo has improved, so if you ask for help, you just keep getting the same outdated advice. Or even worse, they give you tips that only work in high elo, like how you should sync up your wave crashes with your teammates in multiple lanes to set up invades or objective priority. The theoretically correct play is usually not what actually works in your own elo. Oftentimes, it's something that may seem out of the ordinary, like split pushing as an ADC that will give you way more agency. We teach you the correct way to play League like everyone else does, but also the adaptations that actually work in your elo. So you'll always have multiple great ideas for what to do to win games. We're constantly producing and updating our strategies with players getting better, so SkillCapped is by far the best platform for learning League of Legends. We're so confident that if you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund. Our service has zero risk with the potential to save you tons of time in your climb, so make sure to give us a try. So let's start off the video by taking a look at all the item and rune changes that will be issued for S1.1. This new season is going to introduce a third tier of boots that you'll be able to purchase. The caveat though is that you will need to have at least 2 legendary items completed, and your team needs the Blessing of Noxus buff in order for you to upgrade to tier 3, and the upgrade will cost 750 gold. The Blessing of Noxus buff is what your team will receive when completing the new mini objective called Feats of Strength, where whichever team is the first to getting 2 of either First Blood, First Turret, or first to 3 epic monsters will be granted the buff. So you definitely won't be able to upgrade your boots to tier 3 in every single game. However, scaling champs played in the lower ranks are likely to benefit the most from this new addition, as games in low elo last longer. So the first tier 3 boots upgrade is called Armored Advance, and it's going to be the upgrade for plated steel caps. You'll receive 15 more armor and 5 more movement speed, along with a second passive called Noxian Endurance that will grant you a physical damage shield when you take physical damage from a champion. Chain Lanced Crushers will be the tier 3 boots that build out of Merc Treads. The upgrade will grant 10 more magic resist, 5 extra movement speed, and a very similar passive that we saw in Armored Advance. The passive will be called Noxian Persistence and will grant you a magic damage shield when you take magic damage from a champion. Crimson Lucidity will be the tier 3 boots upgrade for the Ionian boots and provide you with 15 more ability haste along with 5 more movement speed. Its passive will be called Noxian Haste, and it's going to grant you 10% movement speed for melee and 8% movement speed for range whenever you heal or shield an ally, damage an enemy with an ability, or use a summoner spell. Forever Forward will be the name of the tier 3 boots that build out of synchronized souls. You will be granted 10 more movement speed for the upgrade, along with a second passive called Noxian Synchrony. Noxian Synchrony will provide you with an additional 10% total movement speed while out of combat. Gunmetal Greaves is what the upgrade for Berserker's Greaves will be called. You will gain an additional 15% attack speed and 5 bonus movement speed, while the passive is called Noxian Gate and will cause your basic attacks against champions to grant 10% movement speed for 2 seconds. So some nice added kiting strength for ADCs with this upgrade. Worth noting as well is that because of these boots upgrades, Zephyr is going to be removed from the game. The tier 3 boots upgrade for Sork Shoes is going to be called Spellslinger's Shoes. It's not actually going to have a unique passive like all the other boots we have covered, as you will just receive 7 more flat magic pen along with 10% pen and 5 more movement speed. Swift March will be the tier 3 upgrade for Boots of Swiftness. The item will provide an additional 15 movement speed, going from 60 up to 75. The passive will be called Noxian Fervor and grant you a 4% bonus total movement speed. On top of all these boots changes, there's going to be a new legendary item added to the game called Bloodletter's Curse. The recipe will consist of a Haunting Guise and Fiendish Codex, with the total cost of the item sitting at 2,900 gold. Stats will include 60 AP, 350 health, and 15 ability haste. The passive will be called Vile Decay and will work so that dealing magic damage applies a stack for 6 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. Each stack will inflict 5% magic resist reduction up to a max of 30% at 6 stacks. You will not be able to stack Bloodletter's Curse with other Blight items, so a combo of Bloodletters and Void Staff staff will not be possible. Champs that can stack up this passive super quick will be the ones with the most potential, so Cassiopeia, Ryze, and other mages with strong consistent damage output will be liking it the most. Abyssal Mask is going to have its health and magic resist increased while its passive is being changed so that it now causes enemies to receive 12% increased magic damage from all sources instead of reducing the enemy's magic resist by 30%. The item will also no longer be unique with other blight items, so you could now build a Void Staff in combination with Abyssal Mask. We've got changes to a couple of tank items as Heartsteel is losing some power with its passive base damage dropping from 80 to 70. The bonus health ratio on the passive is being changed from a 12% bonus health from items ratio to a 6% max health ratio. This ratio change should be more positively skewed because if we take Tahm Kench for example, he's got 1,234 base health at level 8, and with Heartsteel along with Solstice Slay, you tack on another 1,100, which totals up to 2,334 max health. 6% of 2,334 is 140. 12% of 1,100 comes out to 132. So on your one item completion, this change is actually a buff to Heartsteel. We won't bore you guys with even more math, but we did the calculations on 2 items and it's still a buff as well. So even though the base damage is dropping by 10, the scaling at one item is going from 132 damage up to 140. So you're really only losing 2 damage from these adjustments, which is incredibly negligible. So overall, expect for Heartsteel to remain a staple pickup on Mundo, Skarner, Tahm Kench, Cho'Gath, Shen, and Sion for the time being. Towards the end of Season 14, Unending Despair had become the most OP tank item in the game, so Riot has some changes lined up to combat that. Item will have an entirely new recipe that will consist of Aegis of the Legion and a Giant's Belt, so much less efficient than before. Health is going up from 350 to 400, armor takes a huge drop from 60 to 25, while previously there was no magic resist on the item, but you will now be given 25. Passive cooldown is being lowered from 5 to 4 seconds, however the damage from passive is dropping off a cliff, going from 30 scaling to 50 to 8 scaling to 15. It's pretty safe to say that due to these changes, Unending Despair will be much less desirable moving forward. The armor going from 60 to 25 really stings for a champ who like to rush the item against physical damage champs, as this change alone likely means that Unending will no longer be a viable rush. It could still have some viability as a second or third pickup into mixed damage comps, but we just don't see it being a heavily prioritized item any longer. Top lane Maokai is the one champ who will be hurting the most due to these changes, as he loved rushing Unending Despair. And the final tank item being adjusted for the new season is Warmog's. Recipe is being changed so that the Winged Moon plate is out, and taking its place is a Giant's Belt, so a negative change here. 4% movement speed as a stat is being removed from the item. The passive is being absolutely gutted, as the bonus health required to activate the healing is going from 1,500 to 2,000. The regen is dropping from 2.5% max health to 1.5% max health every 0.5 seconds. You will now need to be out of combat for 8 seconds instead of 6 for the passive to activate. Now, the one positive is a new passive being added called Warmog's Vitality, and it will provide you with bonus health equal to 10% bonus health from items. All in all, we see these as being heavy nerfs to Warmog's, and there's really no reason to even purchase the item anymore. It's weird because it's not like Warmog's was even being purchased much at all as of recent anyways, so for Riot to nerf it this hard is kinda strange. 4 new runes are going to be added to the game this season, and the first one is called Axiom Arcanist. Axiom will be replacing Nullifying Orb in the sorcery tree. The rune will provide your ultimate with 14% increased damage or 10% for AoE spells, and when you score a takedown, the cooldown of your R will be reduced by 7%. The entire second row of the domination tree is being overhauled, as Deep Ward will be a new rune replacing Eyeball Collection. Deep Ward will work so that stealth wards and totem wards placed in the enemy jungle are considered deep. All deep wards are granted 1 bonus health, and they last for a longer duration. When you reach level 11, wards that you place in the river will also be considered deep. Ghost Puro is being removed, and taking its place will be a rune called Grizzly Mementos. The rune will provide you with 4 trinket haste per memento stack, up to 100 max stacks. You gain these memento stacks whenever scoring a champion takedown. Sixth Sense is the final new rune, and it will be replacing Zombie Ward. Sixth Sense is going to automatically track untracked nearby wards. At level 11, it will reveal nearby wards for 10 seconds. Our initial expectations of these runes is that Deep Ward will likely be the most popular option for supports, while Grizzly Mementos is prioritized more by carries. On paper, Sixth Sense does seem like the weakest of the 3 and should be picked the least, but it's hard to say for sure until we get to play with all the runes on live servers. So with the item and rune changes covered, arguably the biggest change of the entire patch is going to be the introduction of the new monster called Atakhan. Atakhan is going to spawn in at 20 minutes on either the top or bot side of the map. Whichever side of the map has more kills or damage within the first 14 minutes is the side that Atakhan will spawn on. At 14 minutes, you will see terrain appear on the side of the map that Atakhan will be spawning. There are 2 separate forms that Atakhan can spawn in as. The first form is called Voracious, and it will will spawn in lower kill games. Killing Voracious Atakhan will grant 2 buffs, 1 temporary and 1 permanent. The temporary buff will be called False Life, and it will provide you with a resurrection. When you take lethal damage, you will enter Resurrection for 5.5 seconds, where you will become untargetable, and after 2 seconds into the duration, you will blink to your base. The duration of this buff only lasts for 150 seconds, so you can't just hold on to it forever. The permanent buff will provide you with an additional 40 gold whenever you get a kill for the rest of the game. The second form of Atakhan will be called Ruinous, and it will spawn in higher kill games. Ruinous Atakhan is going to spawn blood roses around the map, and when picking up a blood rose, you will grant 1 stack of the Bloody Petals buff to all team members, and this buff provides 25 experience and 1 adaptive damage. The buff that you get for taking down Ruinous Atakhan is called Crown of Carnage, and it will increase the buffs that you get from epic monsters by 25%. We'll have the complete list of all the buffs up on screen here, so you can pause the video and have a look. With Atakhan spawning in on the map at 20 minutes, Riot will be changing the spawn timers of Herald and Baron. Herald is now going to spawn in at 16 minutes instead of 14, while Baron will be making its way into action at the 25-minute mark instead of 20 minutes. Teleport is going to be adjusted for this season so that it has a completely new cosmetic. Instead of blinking to your target location after the channel completes, you're going to travel in an orb toward the target location. The time in which teleport takes to complete will be based on the distance you're traveling from 0.5 scaling to 5 seconds. You'll now once again be able to target minions and wards with teleport prior to 14 minutes. The cooldown of teleport is dropping from 360 to 300 seconds. So overall, there's just going to be a lot more clarity around the teleport summoner moving forward. You won't really be able to pull off these sneaky teleport plays where the enemy won't see you coming due to the fact that they will see you traveling in an orb across the map whenever you use the spell now. This probably influences pro play more than it does for solo queue because those coordinated teleport flank plays won't be as easy to pull off now. Riot has some really interesting changes to minions lined up, so let's break them down. Minions damage to structures and damage to champions is going up from 50 to 55%. Experience range of minions is being increased from 1400 to 1500. Melee minions' health will be lower early on, but higher later. Attack damage of melee minions is down by 1 early on. Melee minions will now have a new effect to where they will deal bonus damage on hit against lane minions equal to 2% of their current health. Caster minions and cannon minions will also be given very similar treatments, so we'll have their changes up on screen here if you'd like to pause and have a look. The big change to cannon minions is that the first spawn timer will now be at 235 instead of 205, which means cannons will arrive on the 4th wave instead of the 3rd. Super minions are going to be adjusted so that their health is not as high later on in the game, and they also deal less damage later in the game as well. We've got a couple of changes to turrets for this season, as first turret is no longer going to grant 300 bonus gold. The fortification damage reduction that turrets have prior to 5 minutes is being lowered from 85 to 50%. Nexus turrets are now going to respawn, which is a massive change, and they will respawn 3 minutes after being destroyed. We won't be getting any big champion changes until at least the second patch of the season, as there are no top laners being adjusted for S1.1. The item changes that we discussed earlier will have a bit of an effect though, most notably for Maokai. We don't expect for Maokai to be as powerful anymore due to the unending despair changes, so we're going to be bumping him out of S and into A tier. The new rune Axiom Arcanist should give a really nice boost to one top laner in specific, being Kennen. 10% added damage on Kennen's R will be incredible in the mid game if you can get that off on multiple enemies, and will just add to his one-shot power. Aurelia is one top laner who has really shot up in power as of late due to her recent buffs and new Hullbreaker build. Aurelia is absolutely excelling in the higher elos right now, but doesn't see quite the same level of success in the lower ranks, so we're placing her in the S tier. However, if you're diamond or above and this were a tier list for high elo only, we'd definitely consider her for OP. Just like the top lane, there are no champion-specific changes for jungle this patch, so we should expect for the meta to remain quite similar to where it was at the end of Season 14. There are currently 3 junglers right now who are sitting a cut above everyone else, and they include Wukong, Warwick, and Nocturne. Warwick is still super strong right now, even after his end-of-season hotfix nerfs, and he's even better if you are an Emerald or below, as the champ just feasts in low elo. Wukong's the most powerful jungler regardless of rank right now, as he's a great pickup for low and high elo. Wu just got so many buffs towards the end of Season 14 and has been thriving as a result. Fighter junglers in general are just really strong right now, as Graves, Kayn, Briar, and Viego are all very strong S tier picks as well. A bit of an underrated jungler to pay attention to for start of season is Zyra. Zyra has been very quietly performing quite well as of recent, and with the new item Bloodletter's Curse being added to the game, it could slot in as a really nice third purchase for her. Bloodletters could also work quite well on someone like Lilia, as the health and haste that the item provides will make it a much more attractive pen pickup than Void Staff for the champ. Udyr would be one other pick that comes to mind, who should have some good potential with Bloodletters due to all of his consistent damage output and ability to stack Bloodletter's passive very fast. A Bloodletters with Abyssal Mask combo though, could be a potential build for Udyr that would work great into heavy AP comps. There's just one mid lane champion being changed for S1.1, and it's Cassiopeia. Cass will be given 2 scaling to 36 bonus movement speed if her team gets the Blessing of Noxus buff. Remember, Cass can't buy boots, so this change is being issued to provide her with a little more power since she isn't able to take advantage of those new tier 3 boot upgrades. As games drag out in this new season, Cass will be a little weaker moving forward due to the added power that all other champs will be able to obtain. However, we don't see her power level taking any sort of nosedive as a result of it. For now, we'll be leaving Cass in the mid lane S tier. However, if we are somehow way off in this prediction and the boots changes do heavily hurt Cass, then we'll be sure to update you guys in our next tier list. So for the mid lane tier list to kick off the new season, it's going to be looking exactly as to how we had it to round out season 14. Viktor is going to be leading the way as the most powerful carrier right now, as he's been dominating due to his recent overhaul. If the new rune Axiom Arcanist does end up providing more raw value than Mana Flow Band, a few champs we're expecting to find the most success with it include Vel'Koz, Xerath, Malzahar, Swain, Viktor, and Lux. Mana Flow has been that staple rune in the sorcerer tree for quite some time now, so it would be really nice if Arcanist does come in and provide some variety. Bloodletter's Curse should end up being a really nice new addition for these battle mage type champions who will benefit from the health and haste the item offers. Cassiopeia, Ryze, Anivia, Swain, and Vladimir are who we'd expect to thrive the most with the item if it does hit live servers in a powerful state. ADC is the role with the most amount of direct champion changes for this patch, and first up, we've got Ashe. Passive is being changed so that you no longer need to have Frost applied to the enemy to deal bonus damage, as all your auto attacks will now just deal bonus damage equal to 75% plus 40% of your crit strike chance. The previous version of the passive also had a base value to its bonus damage, but that is being removed and now only scales off your crit chance. Auto attacks and abilities will still provide the slow, but you just won't need the Frost slow applied anymore to receive the bonus damage. Q is being changed so that bonus attack speed is up from 25 scaling to 55% to 25 scaling to 65%. Damage per Q flurry is up as well by 5% at all ranks. W base damage is going up from 20 scaling to 80 to 60 scaling to 200. The AD ratio is being adjusted though from a 100% total AD ratio to a 100% bonus AD ratio. So if we do a little math here, an Ashe at level 3 is going to have 15.4 bonus AD from runes and Adoran's Blade. 100% of 15.4 is of course 15.4. So add that to the 60 base damage and you get 75.4 damage from Ashe W at level 3 with this change. Previously, with the 100% total AD ratio, Ashe would have 78.75 total AD at level 3, so add on the 20 base and you get 98.75 damage from W. So it looks like this W change is actually a pretty big nerf early on due to the ratio on W being changed to a bonus instead of total AD. Now, what about when W is fully maxed out though? Ashe would be level 9, and let's say she has her Kraken Slayer completed, which provides 45 bonus AD. In total, Ashe will have 59.4 bonus AD from items and runes, so 59.4 plus the 200 base damage is equal to 259.4 damage with this change. Previously, with the total AD ratio on W, you would add on Ashe's base AD at level 9, which is 78.88 to 59.4 to get a total of 138.28 total AD. 138.28 plus the 80 base damage is equal to 218 damage, so as we can see here, this is actually a huge buff when you have the spell fully maxed out, adding 41.4 damage. So overall, it looks like Riot's goal from these changes are to increase the mid-game power of Ashe while reducing her early game dominance. We're skeptical as to whether this will actually be net positive for Ashe though, because she is an ADC whose identity is built around that early and mid-game domination. We're leaning more towards Ashe dropping in power to start off the season, so we'll be moving her from S into A tier, but we'll have a more concrete idea of where she's landed power-wise when we drop the mid-patch tier list next week. Kalista is going to be receiving a few changes for S1.1 as her mana regen growth is going from 0.4 to 0.8. Q mana cost is being increased from 50 scaling to 70 to 60 scaling to 80. Base damage on Q is going down by 10 at all ranks. E base damage is being adjusted, going from 8 scaling to 24. EAD ratio per subsequent spear is dropping from 25 scaling to 45% to 20 scaling to 40%. So definitely nothing that's going to change the fact that Kalista is one of the weakest ADCs for solo queue, as she'll remain in the C tier to start the season. Another on-hit ADC is being adjusted for this patch, as next up is Varus. Base mana is going down from 360 to 320. Q mana cost is being lowered from 65 scaling to 85 to 50 scaling to 70. W on-hit base damage is adjusted from 8 scaling to 28 to 6 scaling to 30. E mana cost is going up from 80 to 90. So overall, these changes should actually be net negative changes to Varus. Level 1 of Varus gets quite a bit weaker because using your E for poke will be a lot more punishing. Not only is your base mana down by 40, but E now costs 10 more more mana, so if you are using E for poke, you'll be running out of mana much quicker. Q mana cost going down by 15 is a compensation, but we don't see that outweighing the base mana and E nerf. So Varus won't be starting off the season in a top tier spot, as he's going to be placed in the ADC B tier. So having a look at the tier list for ADC, there are a ton of options to choose from right now. ADC is the one role in the game that doesn't really have a true outlier or a champ that is really excelling above everyone else. The OP tier for ADC doesn't even really consist of true OP champs. These are just the ones who are finding that slightest bit more success than the majority. Both Misfortune and Sivir are extremely underrated right now, and have been for a while due to the many ADCs around them getting nerfed, while both of them have been buffed. It's weird because S tier usually isn't the role that holds the most amount of champions. It's usually either A or B tier, but there are just so many really good carries in the role right now who aren't actually traditional ADCs. Seraphine, Victor, Lux, Brand, Ziggs, Veigar, Swain, and Karthus are arguably stronger bot lane champs than traditional ADCs right now, but because they aren't played as often, they don't really get talked about or nerfed, even though they are incredibly powerful. Even with Victor being an OP tier mid, he actually has a higher win rate as a bot lane carry. In fact, literally every single mage that we have in the S tier has a better win rate when played bot than when played in their more popular role. It's the fact that traditional ADCs just can't threaten these mages in the early game at all, and by running teleport as your secondary summoner spell, you can just exert so much lane dominance. For most of these mages, it's the Lost Chapter buy that you're looking for to hit your first big spike in lane, and once you have that, you can just effortlessly poke out the enemy ADC without them being able to trade back. So honestly guys, if you really want some free elo to start off the new season, then you should have a mage in your champion pool. But if that just feels too dirty and you don't want to go down that path, we totally understand. After all, this is a tier list, so we have to put our bias aside and just accept the fact that mages bot lane are top tier right now. There's not a single support who's getting directly changed for S1.1, so let's jump right into the tier list. The OP tier for support will be comprised of 3 champs, as we've got Poppy, Vel'Koz, and Tahm Kench. Tom is the one who we'll be keeping an eye on to start the patch, because the changes to Heartsteel could have an effect on his power. We did break down the Heartsteel change earlier on in the video though, and the nerf looks to be extremely light, so we're leaning more towards Tom retaining his OP tier spot despite the nerf. Vel'Koz should be even more insane than he already is to start the new season because of the new rune Axiom Arcanist. Vel'Koz's R cooldown is just going to be so low now compared to where it was a few patches back, because the base cooldown just dropped by 20 seconds from his buff, and now with Axiom Arcanist, you can reduce your R cooldown by 7% on takedowns. This is just huge for the early game snowball power of Vel'Koz, and if you can pick him with an ADC who's got some long range follow-up like Jhin, Kate, Jinx, or Ashe, the level 6 all-in is so deadly. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So that's gonna wrap it all up for our S1.1 tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.